Alright, so to make a long story short, Nintendo is going to be releasing the Super Nintendo Classic now for the, like the NES Classic, but the same thing's going to happen to it. And again, if you're a Nintendo fan, you got to admit this is pretty hardcore ridiculous that Nintendo's not really going to do this like they say they're going to. What they're going to do is they're going to make the resources scarce so the scalpers will get them, the prices will go up, the hype will go up, and then Nintendo will somehow be able to resell some of their older games for a higher value because people are going to want them now, and then people will buy them off the eShop. Or that's what they did with the Classic. That's the only reason they did that. Also, think of it like this: Nintendo is getting to the point now where they haven't really been about like trying to make products for the consumer anymore, which is why they ignore their fans for the most part. They're only trying to make money for by overcharging people and taking shortcuts, or essentially taking the lazy way out. If you want examples of this, when the Wii U first came out, they printed 100 million copies, and it was like underpowered and all that. It was 160 or something like that. Whatever it was, 107. I can't remember, but I said in the past they actually sold 16.8 million. It actually was 13.2 million. So that was actually really bad compared to what they did. So they took a loss. But the reason they made their money up was because they recycled the Wii U's with the Switch. And the thing with the Switch is even more underpowered and less. You might find enjoyment out of it, but as of right now, I still stand that I think it sucks in a lot of ways because it's just not worth the $300, and Nintendo just overcharges. And this is not even the hidden fees like the internet, the DLC, the seasons passes, the online subscription fee. I don't even know if you got to pay for their apps. I know you got to pay for Nintendo's starting to make it so that way certain games like ARMS for example requires certain accessories in some cases. It's not just the Joy-Cons and the Joy controller, which it sucks because there's people that love Nintendo, and I just feel bad for them because they got to spend even more money compared to that of Sony and Microsoft. And again, I'm not just saying this because I love video games in general. I want to buy my games, but the only problem I've always had with some of these games is that when for collectors, there's some games that, especially if you're a retro fan, you're going to be spending way too much money on some games because people just want way too much. I think the most money I've ever spent on a game was $300 almost, and that was a copy of Mega Man X3 for the Super Nintendo. I got the Japanese version complete in box for $50. But it was actually a friend that actually gave me the money because I did a lot of translating for him and bargaining, and I still have it upstairs. But it's just crazy how things can really decipher, here's a Super Nintendo that Nintendo could actually release and put all the ROMs on it, but they only put 20, and they're not going to put the rare ones on there, of course not. It's only going to be maybe A Link to the Past, Super Mario World, and those were fun games, but you can only play so many games so many times before maybe you might want to play something else in the library. And I guarantee you all the games that Nintendo had, why not just release them all? That's what I would do. I would release every single one of those games for maybe, and people would buy it for $70. I guarantee it. It'd be so worth it. But you know what the problem is, though? Nintendo wouldn't do that because it would make their virtual console sort of limited. They'd rather charge more and more money because, again, look at what, like Jim Sterling once said with the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo's going to they're going to give you certain games a month because they know people will buy it because that's just what they want. They want people to keep paying for the same thing over and over again and limiting them. That's why, when they released Zelda, they only released Zelda on the Switch, and then, they still haven't released all the other games for the Nintendo Switch, like Super Mario Odyssey and all that. It was only because they did it because they wanted people, they say it was because they wanted people to finish it, but at the same time, though, they did it because they wanted people to, they wanted to give people more of a reason to say, hey, go out and buy this console, but instead of just buying it all at once, you know what I mean? That's not really a good strategy from the consumer base because in some cases it's really not giving people a reason to want to buy the console right away as compared to take Sony in the past. Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto himself once stated that every good game takes a long time to make and a bad game is forever bad. And I agree with that. But at the same time, though, when you really think about how many games Nintendo really makes, there's some games that they've never made in a long time that, and people would say because maybe they didn't sell well, but But how would they be able to boost the popularity of it if they don't try to make more of them? I mean, like take like F-Zero. They haven't made another F-Zero game in over 13 years. And people say the last game was actually GX on the GameCube. It was Climax on the Game Boy Advance, but that was never localized. And, I mean, if you're someone who's actually willing to play those games, they're fun games. They're just probably hard as hell, but that's what I've been playing lately, and I can't stop playing them. And I translate stuff for people. I'll give you another example. Nintendo just needs to, like, I mean, again, look at the PS2, for example. Okay, Sony had like almost 20,000 games. Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe some of them were shovelware. A lot of them were never localized, and maybe some of them you probably would never play because maybe they're not the greatest games ever. But I mean, if somebody told you that there was a library of 20,000 games, almost, I think it's like more or less like 18,000, but it's just rounded up. You would want to probably go sorting through that. I mean, if you had a PS2, you never know what you're going to find in that library. And I mean, if you think about it, when the PS2 ran, it was like 13 years it ran for. And, if Sony could do that, why can't Nintendo, make good games? Like they could make good games and like have everybody else develop for them as well. You know what I mean? Because the consoles are always underpowered, and they always want to charge people more than they should, and that's the reason why, if it wasn't for popularity, that would be the reason why Nintendo's not doing as well as they're doing now. Because people are loyal to Nintendo. And I'm not saying people can't do what they want with their money, but I'm just saying that this is why Nintendo, when they release this Super Nintendo Classic, that history's going to repeat itself, because they know that people are going to fall for this. Nintendo, it took me a while to figure out why they do this, but it's always because they get more money out of it in the end. Because they're going to cancel, they're going to make it so that way only so many people can get these. Nintendo's going to stop manufacturing them, so they're not going to make money coming directly from them. That they're going to, probably didn't even take them maybe $20 to make that, and they sell it for like $100 or $79, and then what they'll do is they'll just boost the hype up. And because people can't get them, they'll either have to go on the internet, and then the games will just go up in price as well. Because Nintendo knows that they're trying. It's essentially just like it's like a decoy to really boost their virtual sales, their virtual console for the Switch, because they know that people are going to want those games. But I mean, the idea is that you could just play it you could just get an emulator and play it. I mean, like or there's people that have modded the Super Nintendo Classics and they put all the games in them. And technically, it's not illegal if you already own it. So if you already own these games, and even if you bought the Nintendo Switch, and technically there's no law that says you can't do what you want with your own version. So as long as you're not hacking their servers or anything. But I mean, like, but if you buy a product and you put all these games on it, and that's what Nintendo originally wanted to do with it. Because let's be honest, if it wasn't for sacred reason, like scarceness, meaning like they're trying to make it rare on purpose, they would put all those games on it anyway. So it's essentially what Nintendo would be doing. So my point is this: Nintendo is not really in the interest of their fans as much as we like to think they are. And if you're a Nintendo fan, I mean, you got to admit this is pretty hardcore right now. That they really just don't try like they should, and this is why people have been just up and leaving them. Now, I'll be honest, I still love Nintendo, but this is the reasons why I don't like them in a lot of aspects. I really I get they're a business, but mind you, Nintendo has more money, has ways of making money like Sony and Microsoft do. I mean, it's like, and even I can't defend Microsoft and Sony on a lot of things, but that's just the way it is, though. It's the way people do business. It's not my corporation, or it's not but at the same time, though, it's just the way it goes. It's just this overwhelming, ridiculous thing that, somehow they think they can get away with it, but somehow they can't. And it kind of makes you wonder if it's the consumer or it's the company's fault, Some people say the consumer is never wrong, the customer is always right, but it just seems like maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe the consumer's been always wrong because, they're the reason why these companies do this stuff. Like, again, like take Activision, for example, because everybody hates Activision. Everybody says, like, oh, we'll never buy that terrible reboot of Call of Duty. But yet so many people bought it regardless of hate because they wanted the new Infinity Warfare, or I forget if it was the remaster or if it was Infinity Warfare people were complaining about, like, sucked. But, the point is, it's like they're still going to win either way because people will buy it and they'll make money. Doesn't matter how much effort, and they know this. That's why companies get away with this stuff. People will say, oh, that thing sucked. I'll never buy it. And then they buy it. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird, huh? But it just humans are weird. But anyways, you know, what do you guys think? You know, comment, rate, subscribe, favorite, share this video. I personally hope Nintendo changes the way they do stuff with the Switch. Kind of, you know, hopefully it will be better. I mean, you know, make it better than Sony and Microsoft's consoles or even PC. You know, Nintendo has the money. Okay, but until that day comes, I'm not spending as much money on the Switch. Because mind you, you got to pay. It's not just about the video games, the console, and the controller anymore. It's about the console itself, which is $300, or if you're unfortunate enough to have to go buy it somewhere else where it's even more ridiculous, then you got the accessories, the games, the internet subscription, and then you got to pay for your own internet yourself. Then you got to pay for I mean, not just the games, but like the season's passes. I mean, like, you know, it's more than that. And when you really think about it, I mean, yeah, Sony and Microsoft might have these same issues in some aspects, but it's like, it's funny how Nintendo's actually trying to overcharge people even more now. And when you think about, like, you know, you can get like their competitors' consoles even cheaper. I mean, Nintendo, I mean, I can wait to play their games. I mean, and assuming that the games go down in price and they don't go way up, because it's weird, because compared to Sony and Microsoft, you know, Nintendo knows how to make their games even more. People say it's because their games hold value. It's because they know how to keep the prices. They never drop the prices, and then like once the games start going way up and beyond, the games just never drop. Like Splatoon 1 for the Wii U is still $59.99. I have a friend who still sells video games at his store. I mean, I don't work there full time. I just kind of go in and out of there, and he tells me all these things that, you know, he does, and I even kind of hold it against him in some aspects. But I'm going to tell you right now, though, that Nintendo games have been well known to, you know, they'll never really drop for the most part. They just go way up. And in retro games, they'll start off like maybe $60, and then they'll just go maybe up to like $300. Some of them do, because maybe they're rare, and it's what people are paying for them, but they don't buy them. Like, it's like people get, like, they'll list them on there faster than the current prices will drop, and then the price just keeps going up. I mean, that's just, like, take Mega Man X3 for the Super Nintendo, even though Capcom made that. It wasn't Nintendo, but it was on the Super Nintendo. That's why that was so expensive. You know? I mean, it was a game that was rare, but at the same time, though, it wasn't, like, too rare, you know, if that makes sense. But, anyways, Nintendo products just usually go up in price because scalpers and people will buy anything, especially at a high price. So that's usually why people often, again, not every game, but there's a good chunk of them that are just ridiculous. And if you're a collector, I mean, I wish you the best of luck, you know, getting the English versions or the Japanese versions, if there are any that are that high. But yeah, that's essentially how that goes.